Now the claims are getting even more bizarre. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the congresswoman from Georgia, is now saying the federal government is literally controlling the weather. We're controlling the weather. It's beyond ridiculous. It's so stupid. It's got to stop.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, lasers really to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams.
Laser beams.
By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. We realize that for decades now, these governments have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
In the near future, a push-button storm starter could be a real thing.
Just imagining this situation. If there was a rain cloud that was going to pass over an area of drought and not rain, you can, theoretically induce the rain and get the rain where it's needed.
That storm starter isn't the laser beam itself, but rather a popping energy that comes off of much higher power beams than this one. The problem is those pops have always had trouble getting into the sky. Now Matt has discovered a way to get the laser to pop all the way in the clouds. In theory, that's what starts a storm. We created a cloud of our own behind Matt's lab. A few months ago, Matt's colleagues in Arizona got this working experimentally. The next step is to get it to work in the sky.
And the conditions are now right, and they just need to be triggered now. Does this concern you that you may be messing with Mother Nature and doing something that you don't completely understand up here in the cloud?
I mean, I suppose that's always a danger, but we're not even near to the case where it could be dangerous yet, so not too much now.
It's almost like an on-off switch for a thunderstorm.
That's the idea behind it.
Right here in the cloud.
Yep.
In Orlando, Dave Malkoff, The Weather Channel.
So I have not been convinced by any of the reports to suggest that experiments in the upper atmosphere, physics experiments, are having any effect on our weather whatsoever.
Right.
And it would be tragic if we wanted to say, oh, that's why it's getting hotter in the world, okay? Because there's some experiment happening. That would be tragic.
We can't just flip a switch like Colonel Joe Moore in Mad Max Fury Road. But we do have a superpower, straight out of science fiction's X-Men: The Last Stand. It's called weather modification, or cloud seeding.
We can't create the cloud. There has to be an existing storm system.
We just give it a bump.
Yeah.
We just give it a bump. Yeah.
There are currently 42 cloud seeding projects across the American West, like this one in Utah, where they take planes like this with flares attached. They fly right into the storm and send microscopic particles into the cloud. Particles that act like magnets for water droplets, bond them together until they are heavy enough to fall to the ground as rain or snow. At the University of Colorado, researchers are working on artificial intelligence to deploy cloud seeding drones. And it's not just cloud seeding from the sky. There are hundreds of those things. That shaft you see in the foreground is a ground-based cloud seeder. The little flame coming out is sending tiny silver iodide particles up into the sky. When a storm comes through, they go up to 2,000 feet above our head, into the storm, up those mountains, and make more snow than it naturally would.
The OSS, Office of Strategic Services, or as it is known today, the CIA.
Controlling the weather is the ultimate superweapon. It's even more powerful than the atomic bomb.
Even today, Many world governments are pouring millions of dollars into research designed to manipulate weather.
I think weather modification has definitely been an ongoing endeavor of governments all over the world for decades.
We're controlling the weather. It's beyond ridiculous. It's so stupid. It's got to stop.